Welcome to EnglishPass Podcast, brought to you from our local studio in Calgary. I'm your host, Samantha, and today we're diving into an exciting topic: cheating on a test. Whether you're a beginner or intermediate learner, in this podcast, we're helping you level up your English listening and reading skills. And before we get started, let me tell you that the sponsor of this episode is TypeFit, keyboard typing practice and learning service. Today, we're exploring something really interesting: cheating on a test. This is an engaging subject for English learners because it covers a lot of practical vocabulary and real-world situations. So let's dive right in. Cheating on a test is fundamentally defined as an act of deception intended to provide an unfair advantage in an academic setting. It is a form of academic dishonesty that occurs when a student breaks the established rules of an assessment to get a higher grade than they would have earned through their own knowledge and effort alone. While we often think of cheating as a simple choice made by an individual, it is actually a complex behavior influenced by psychology, technology, social pressure, and the environment in which we learn. Why do students decide to take such a risk? Is it simply a lack of character, or is there more to the story? To understand cheating, we must look at how it has evolved from simple methods to high-tech schemes, and how it affects the very foundation of education. Let us begin with some basic definitions to ensure we are on the same page. A key term in this discussion is integrity. Integrity refers to the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles that you refuse to change. In an academic sense, integrity means doing your own work and being honest about what you know and what you do not know. When a student chooses to cheat, they are experiencing a lapse in integrity. Another important term is academic dishonesty, which is a broad category that includes cheating, but also things like plagiarism. Plagiarism is the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as one's own. While cheating usually happens during a test, plagiarism often happens during the writing of an essay or a report. The history of cheating is surprisingly long and shows that people have always looked for shortcuts when the stakes are high. For example, consider the imperial examinations in ancient China. These were incredibly difficult tests used to select government officials. Because passing the exam meant a life of wealth and power, candidates went to extreme lengths to succeed. Historians have found silk underwear from hundreds of years ago that was covered in tiny, handwritten text of the Confucian classics. These were cheat sheets designed to be hidden under a student's robes. This shows us that the impulse to bypass the system is not a modern invention. It has existed as long as there have been high-stakes evaluations. In the modern world, however, the methods have become much more sophisticated. We now live in an era of constant connectivity, which has changed the nature of cheating entirely. Surveillance has become a common part of the testing process to counter this. Surveillance is the close observation of a person or a place, often using technology like cameras or software. Even with these measures, students find creative ways to break the rules. Let us look at some concrete, real-world examples of how cheating has manifested in different cultures and contexts. Our first example takes us to the state of Bihar in India. In 2015, the world was shocked by photographs showing dozens of parents and friends climbing the walls of a multi-story school building. They were hanging onto windows like Spider-Man just to pass notes to students taking their 10th grade board exams. This example is fascinating because it shows that cheating is not always a secret act done by one person. In this case, it was a social phenomenon driven by the intense pressure families feel for their children to succeed in a competitive job market. A second example involves one of the most prestigious universities in the world, Harvard. In 2012, more than 100 students were investigated for what is known as collusion. Collusion is a specific type of cheating where two or more people work together secretly to deceive others or gain an unfair advantage. In this instance, students were taking a take-home exam, which meant they were allowed to use their books but were strictly forbidden from talking to each other. However, when the professors graded the papers, they found that dozens of students had provided identical answers, including the same unique typos. This case highlighted the blurry line that sometimes exists for students between helping a friend and committing academic fraud. Our third example involves the use of high technology. In 2016, a medical school in Thailand had to cancel its entrance exams after discovering a group of students using smart glasses. These glasses had tiny cameras that could take pictures of the test questions. The images were sent to an outside group of people who would look up the answers and then text them back to the students' smartwatches. This is a very complex form of cheating that requires a lot of money and organization. It also brings up a scary thought. Would you want to be treated by a doctor who cheated their way through medical school? This is why the consequences of cheating can extend far beyond the classroom. A fourth example can be found in the world of standardized testing. Specifically, the SAT and ACT exams used for college admissions in the United States. In a massive scandal known as Varsity Blues, wealthy parents were found to have paid thousands of dollars to professional test takers. These professionals would use fake identification to enter the testing center and take the exam in place of the student. This is a form of fabrication. Fabrication in an academic sense is the invention or falsification of information or identity. It is considered one of the most serious forms of cheating because it involves a deep level of premeditated dishonesty. Fifth, consider the case of Stuyvesant High School in New York City. This is a school for highly gifted students, yet it faced a major scandal when it was discovered that students were using smartphones to share photos of exam pages in large group chats. This example is important because it challenges the misconception that only bad or struggling students cheat. In reality, students who are high achievers often feel even more pressure to maintain a perfect record, leading them to make poor choices when they feel they might fail to meet expectations. Sixth, we can look at military academies, such as West Point in the United States. These institutions have very strict honor codes that state a student will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. Despite this, there have been instances where hundreds of students were caught collaborating on math exams. In a military context, the deterrent for cheating is usually much higher than in a normal school. A deterrent is something that discourages a person from doing something through fear of the consequences. At West Point, cheating can lead to being expelled and losing a future career in the Army. However, even with such a strong deterrent, the human brain sometimes prioritizes short-term relief over long-term safety. Now, we should talk about why people cheat from a psychological perspective. Many students believe they are good people even when they cheat. They do this through a process called rationalization. This means they create excuses that make their behavior seem okay. A student might say, "The teacher didn't explain the material well," or "Everyone else is doing it, so I have to do it to stay competitive." Does this make the cheating right? Of course not, but it explains how a person can maintain their self-image while doing something dishonest. Interestingly, the presence of the internet and artificial intelligence has created a new landscape for cheating. With tools like ChatGPT, a student can generate a full essay in seconds. This has led to a debate about the definition of original work. If a machine writes your thoughts for you, is it still your work? Educators are now trying to move away from traditional tests and toward authentic assessment, which focuses on a student's ability to explain their thinking in person rather than just giving a right or wrong answer on a piece of paper. One of the biggest misconceptions about cheating is that it only hurts the school or the teacher. In reality, the person most hurt by cheating is the student themselves. Education is like exercise for the brain. If you go to the gym and pay someone else to lift the weights for you, you are the one who stays weak. When you cheat on a test, you are missing the opportunity to strengthen your neural pathways and truly learn the material. This creates a knowledge gap that will eventually cause problems in the future. Imagine a bridge engineer who cheated on their structural integrity exams. That is a terrifying thought. To wrap up the conceptual journey, we must look at the idea of a culture of integrity. Some schools have found that they can reduce cheating not by adding more cameras, but by giving students more trust. Some universities have unproctored exams, where students are left alone in a room and trusted to follow the rules. Research shows that when students feel trusted and understand the value of their education, they are actually less likely to cheat. They realize that a grade is just a number, but knowledge is something that belongs to them forever. In conclusion, cheating on a test is more than just a simple act of looking at a neighbor's paper. It is a complex issue tied to our history, our technology, and our psychology. By understanding the different forms it takes, from the wall climbers in India to the smart glasses in Thailand, we can see how universal the pressure to succeed is. However, by focusing on integrity and understanding that the true goal of education is learning rather than just scoring, we can begin to see why cheating is a shortcut that ultimately leads to a dead end. Whether it is through collusion, plagiarism, or fabrication, the result is always the same: a missed chance to grow and a crack in one's own character. Understanding this is the first step toward valuing honest achievement. And that's all for today's episode of EnglishPass Podcast. I hope you found this helpful. Remember to practice what you've learned and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we improve. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and join us next time. Let me remind you that the sponsor of the episode is TypeFit, and I suggest to check the link at the description. I'm Samantha, and I'm excited to be your host for many more fascinating episodes to come. Until then, keep learning and